So it's very exciting whenever we have a speaker that's doing her passion. Gabrielle Bird is a priestess, a mushroom medicine woman and herbalist based in Palmer, Alaska. And she and her husband Dennis are dedicated stewards and foragers of the of the sacred fungi, both through their public-facing herbal and fungal apothecary, Chai Medicinals in Palmer, and the non-dogmatic, non-denominational, nature-based universal ministry of transcendence, which they minister together. And Gabby's been growing up and consuming mushrooms in ceremony for almost 20 years and dedicates her life to holding space for others on their own personal journeys to self-trust through a return to nature. Gabby's sacred fungal education is a blend of travel, study, and hands-on ethnobotanical training and sacred ceremony in ecstatic states. Her journey has taken her throughout the Americas to find connections with human shamanic teachers, Mother Nature, the plants, the fungi themselves are her master guides. She has a BA from the University of Vermont in Spanish and Latin American Studies, and she is passionate about the ceremonial consumption of sacred fungi in tribute to the habitats they hail from. Song, sound, and rhythm drive the space she holds for mushrooms and ministry. So please give Gabby Chai Bird a beautiful Adam welcome.
So nice to see you all. Some of you I know from before, and some new faces here also. I'm here today on behalf of the Adam Center. They're so kind to invite me back for the educational portions and the ceremonies. So today I'm going to be talking about Amanita Muscaria. Is everyone familiar with this mushroom? Is there anyone who isn't familiar with the Amanita Muscaria mushroom?
Yeah.
You're not sure what it is?
No clue.
Okay, so the Amanita mushroom is this mushroom right here. It's the red mushroom with the white dots. Have you seen it around?
No, I've seen pretty pictures of it, usually in cartoons.
Okay, yes, it has a long history with mythology and even pop culture. It's deeply ingrained into our psyches since we're a child, up until we die. And this mushroom has had sort of a bad reputation for being toxic and poisonous, and some of the mushrooms that are in the Amanita genus are in fact deadly poisonous. However, the Amanita Muscaria, the Amanita pantherina, and other subspecies of Amanita Muscaria, the red mushroom with the white dots, the one that we see so often here in the fall, basically from the end of July until sometime, actually they're fruiting again right now because it's been so warm down in Girdwood. I have friends that have been sending me pictures of Amanita harvests down in Girdwood right now. So that's pretty late in the season for this zone. But there are microclimates down in Girdwood, so they are still popping up. So these mushrooms, like I said, they do have a bad rap, but a lot of that comes from the shamanic history of the mushroom and what it has been used for historically, culturally, and religiously since basically the dawn of humanity. From what I understand, and Phil may have a different perspective on this regarding jellyfish, but mushrooms are the oldest kingdom. They're the oldest kingdom on this planet, and they gave rise to dirt. So spores can travel through boiling hot, through freezing cold. There's actually mushroom species up in Fairbanks that are coming out of the permafrost that is now melting that haven't been seen since the ice ages. And because they are so resilient, some of those spores are actually resulting in mushroom fruit bodies. So this is a very, very ancient mushroom. It's a very ancient panacea healer from the northern hemisphere of this planet. It does exist in the southern hemisphere, but as far as we all know, it is not native to the southern hemisphere. It was brought there. So the Amanita Muscaria mushroom, it grows in acidic soils. It grows around conifers, like any type of pine tree, and it grows especially well with birch tree. The birch and the pine combination up here is basically where you will find lots of Amanita, as well as moisture-rich areas. And sometimes you'll even see Amanita growing in parks or in old airstrip places or on the side of a soccer field at a school. And one thing that's important to know when you're foraging any type of mushroom is that mushrooms are bioremediators, which means that they clean up toxins in the environment that they're in. So when we forage or purchase any of the mushrooms that we work with, like chaga or amanita, we're very specific about where we want to receive those mushrooms from. We are looking for mushrooms that come from pristine boreal forests up here in Alaska, as well as we purchase Siberian mushrooms that also come from a very similar habitat to here. And the shamanic practices associated with this mushroom, as I was saying, have been found all over the Northern Hemisphere. So if you're Scottish, if you're Irish, if you have Russian heritage, Native Alaskan, all the way down basically to the equator, in the mountainous areas where pine trees grow, there is a human, cultural, and religious history with these mushrooms, panacea healing mushrooms that are the Amanita Muscaria mushrooms. Now, we're going to specifically focus on Meso-America today, and because this ceremony and this time of year is a very special time of year when the Meso-Americans knew that the veil was thin between Earth and the other worlds, the underworlds, the land of the dead. In Meso-American culture, there's a celebration called Dia de los Muertos. Is anyone familiar with Dia de los Muertos?
Yeah.
Is anyone not familiar? You're familiar with Dia de los Muertos? That's awesome. Did you see the movie? What's that kids movie?
Coco.
Coco, yeah. Did you see Coco? It was a great one. Is anyone unfamiliar with Dia de los Muertos? Okay, y'all know about it. So I had the beautiful experience of going to Mexico City, it was at least 6 or 8 years ago now, on Dia de los Muertos, and I got to visit Frida Kahlo's home, and I got to see her dresses and pictures of her Cholo Squintle dogs, the hairless dogs that are native to Mexico and are very ancient species or ancient breed of dogs. And I'll tell you a little story about that, but not to get too much on a tangent. I got to go down to Mexico and see the way that they displayed their altars in Mexico City and just sort of the culture around that. And it was a really awesome experience. I've also been in Oaxaca for Dia de los Muertos. And now every year up here in Alaska, I bring and celebrate with others this very special time of year that is so close to my heart. The work that and the resulting growth and understanding that has come from the Dia de los Muertos ceremonies that we've held here in Anchorage and in the Valley are profound. And so it's not just about the mushrooms, it's not just about the song, it's the intention, it's the time of year. This is a time when the veil is thin and where communication with our ancestors is more potent. And in Mesoamerica, there's such a rich history of mushrooms, both psilocybin-containing species and, most people don't know this, Amanita Muscaria, intertwined with their religious practices, with their healing, and actually other parts of life that are less savory, and I'll tell you about that. But we'll talk first about the religious aspect. So Mesoamerica is highly layered in civilizations. Before, the Olmec civilization was basically the first civilization that started to build cities around Mexico, as far as we understand. But before the Olmecs, there were many tribes of people that were they were doing small agriculture, they were hunter-gatherers, and these people are said to have come across the Eurasian land gap, come over through the northern Americas and down, and then landed in Mexico to inhabit the area. So the first really big civilization there were the Olmecs, followed by other civilizations, the Toltecs, and the Aztecs, later the Toltecs, up until today, where it's just like there are still sects of indigenous cultures there. The more hard to reach the sect is geographically. So if they're up in the mountains, for example, the more intact their ancient ways tend to be. So when we talk about the Olmec and the Oaxacan people, the people that were from what is now Mexico City, is in that region too, sort of Central Mexico. We find ruins like Teotihuacan. You may be familiar with this landmark. It's a very ancient city and monument that was built long before the Aztec civilization was in the area, probably by the Olmecs, and they were using mushrooms, way back, many thousands of years before AD time starts. So in the BC times, like from 2000 BC up until AD, and then they continue. Many of the people in these regions, especially in the mountainous areas, are continuing to this day to use sacred mushroom rituals in their religious and healing practices. Because for them, healing and what we're all coming back to now sort of as a society, well, some of us, is that the healing process is much more than just a physical process or an emotional process. It is, or a psychological process. It's a holistic process, and it can be very spiritual for certain people. And that's where the Amanita is very, very powerful. So in Meso-American cultures, we've seen this layering, because not only were there different civilizations being built and falling throughout history, but by the time we got into about the 1500s AD, the conquistadores had started to arrive from Europe. The European conquestors had started to come, the Spanish and whatnot. So when they came, a lot of anything that was created to preserve the history of these cultures was at risk, and most of it was destroyed. So we're talking about statues, we're talking about pictographs, codices, mostly all in pictographs, because they didn't have written language. None of these cultures, not even the Maya yet, had the Popol Vuh wasn't even written yet. And so they were pictographic writings and codices, but they were religious documents. And I actually want to show you this one specifically. This is from this is a page from the Yuta Codex. And so the conquistadores, they did destroy mostly all of the historical evidence of these cultures, and a lot of what they were depicting was their sacred mushroom rituals and their healing practices, as well as the games that they played to settle warfare. And mushrooms were involved in just about every aspect of these people's lives. They were using it for medicine and healing. They were using it for ecstatic spiritual experiences, which is what this depicts. They were using it for war games and beheadings. So they were not necessarily a very peaceful, society pre-Columbian. There was a lot going on. But one thing that's interesting is that they would have these games where they would fight to the death, and actually at the end, some people would have to do self-beheadings under the influence of certain astronomical occurrences and under the influence a lot of times of mushrooms. They would participate in these horrible, scary games that resulted in death. But for them, life and death were just part of the same process, and death wasn't so taboo like it is for us now. Death was a part of life, and you can see those rastros, or you can see those threads going up until today's celebration of Dia de los Muertos, where we're not rejecting death. We're going to the graveyards. We're bringing offerings, pan de muertos, bread of the dead, mole, tamales, different traditional beverages and drinks as offerings to bring to the ancestors and to honor the ancestors. Marigolds, you see a lot. Lots of art depicting skeletons and, really rejoicing in the celebration of death and honoring the presence of loved ones past that in these cultures they believe are just right here on the other side of the veil. So this is the time of year to do these sorts of practices. Let's see. So this is a page from the Yuta Codex. Weirdly enough, these documents were brought back to Europe by Borgia, I think his name was, and they were brought to the king and queen of Spain, and they actually ended up all the way in Vienna, Austria. And supposedly you can go see these codices in the like National Museum in Vienna, but you can't just see them. They're like hidden, and you would have to ask to be able to see them. But like hopefully one day in my life I'll be able to go and see these actual codices that are really fundamental and really basic in evidence, and that, you know, these mushrooms have been a part of spiritual communion and a sacrament since the dawn of humanity across the world. So, like I was saying, mostly when you think of Meso-American shamanic culture and mushrooms, you think of psilocybin. Mexico has some of the most, well, it has like the most diverse and plentiful abundance of mushroom species in the world as a country. And they have so many different varietals of psilocybin containing mushrooms. So in this little pictograph here, you see I'll pass it around, and it's kind of hard to see, but this guy probably, he's a shaman, and he's signaling that the Venus portal is opening by pointing up and down with his fingers. He's got this little chameleon monkey guy on his back, and the monkey guy has all these little balls attached to him, and they're different colors, and the different colors mean different things. But essentially, he's meeting with the shaman. He's ingesting mushrooms. The shaman here this right here is depicting a head. I don't know if you can see that, but some of the art and some of the statues that remain down in Mesoamerica that you can still find and see in museums like El Museo Arqueológico de Mexico City are, beheaded statues. And so that's what's happening here. He's eating the mushrooms. There's a beheading happening. He's meeting with all of these like deities, and so we'll talk about a little more about the deities and how it has sort of morphed into a syncretic religion that is now like Catholicism in Latin America. So like a melding and a blending of religions that carries on up until today. So he's communing with these deities, and then he's falling through the Venus portal, and on the other side he's like a fully developed shaman, like he's a fully embodied shaman here at the bottom, and these reeds of understanding that were once loose are now tied. So this is a very important document for our ministry as well, because this really shows the ancient, and it's clear, this is hardly a parable. I mean, it's very obvious what's going on in this, even to a modern day American. So I'll pass it around for you guys to check out. I have it framed in my home. I have it in our place of business, and it's very, very dear to our hearts and very important for us. So let's see, where do I take it from here? There's so much to say. So the derumbes there, all these different psilocybin containing species all over the different geographical regions of Mexico. And we have some evidence, like Xochipilli is another, it's a statue of a shaman in a cross-leg position, and he has nicotine flowers, tobacco flowers on him, and mushrooms on him. The mushroom worship is not lost. Like you can see it very clearly in many of these statues that are preserved, not just from the Aztec regions of central Mexico, but up into the Yucatan, where the Maya were and the Nahua people were and still are to this day. Mountainous parts of Guatemala and even El Salvador would be included, because back then it wasn't Mexico, Guatemala, and El Salvador. It was, regional by the people of the lands. So it was hard. I was a little worried before giving this talk, because I was like, oh my goodness, I just know that people were taking Amanita down there, but I can't find any evidence. Like, how am I going to link this? I might have to go to this talk and tell these people, like, I think this is what was going on, and we just don't know. But this book is so complete, so beautiful, and I have it here for sale. I buy it directly from the author. His name's Kevin Feeney. He has a whole chapter about Meso-America and Amanita Muscaria. And so I was delighted to tap into that and get a little bit more, scholarly research. Basically, just like I was saying before, the harder it is to arrive at a region, the more protected those people and those cultures will be. The pines in Mexico, they're growing high up in the mountains. It's hard to get to these places. It's still hard to get to these places. I drove all over Mexico about 10 years ago by myself. It was nuts. Like, I've had a crazy life. But I have driven to all these regions, and even to this day, it's very dangerous to drive up there. There's not a lot of people, and the roads are really messed up. They're really scary, lots of avalanche and all kinds of things. So you can only imagine how hard it was for the conquistadores to get to these areas. And so they didn't. They simply did not arrive where the Amanita Muscaria grows. So they never learned much about the Amanita Muscaria culture with the religious aspect and the life aspect. You've even probably heard of Maria Sabina. Has everyone heard of Maria Sabina here? Maria Sabina was she's not alive anymore, but she was a mushroom shamanist from Huautla de Jimenez, the Oaxacan region of Mexico, and she was sort of discovered by Gordon Wasson in the 50s because him and his wife, who was Russian, Valentina, and by the way, they were amateur mycologists. Valentina knew more about mushrooms because she was from Russia, so it was more in her culture. There was less mycophobia coming from Russia. Gordon Wasson, he was an American. And so Valentina didn't get enough credit really, but they wrote books and they met Maria Sabina, and they wrote about the veladas that Maria Sabina would hold in her home, these mushroom veladas, where she would invite people to come and take fresh psilocybin containing species and stay all night while she sang to the nature songs that came to her. And by velada means by candlelight, so they were candlelit sessions. So this was in the 50s, and once Gordon Wasson came back and started writing about this and publishing his work, Rolling Stone magazine picked up his publications, and then everything just went nuts. The Rolling Stones wanted to go to Huautla. Everyone started going down there. Bob Dylan, all these pop stars, and all these famous people started going to have this sacred experience with these sacred mushrooms. Maria Sabina and her family. And ultimately, this ended in the death of Maria's son by the townspeople because they were angry at her. She was a multi-generational shamanist. You know, she had learned from her ancestors. She was teaching her daughter, Apollonia, how to provide these ceremonies. And, at the end of it all, after her son was murdered by the townspeople because of her sharing with these North American their sacred rituals and their sacred experiences, she said she wished she had never given the mushrooms to anyone from up here. But nowadays we're at a very critical point in health and healing, and these mushrooms are really coming to the forefront because a lot of us are tired of the status quo of the medical system. In our ministry, we serve people, we grow psilocybin, we forage amanita, and we serve our parish, but we only serve it as sacrament. It's not it is a fungal medicine, but above all, it's a spiritual sacrament, and that's the capacity in which we work with it, and that's the capacity in which we're going to work with the amanita today in ceremony. The work of Maria Sabina and R. Gordon Wasson, it all started with the wondrous sacred blue mushroom, the psilocybin-containing species of mushrooms. But Gordon Wasson, he wrote another book, and it's not in print anymore. But I got it. It was an expensive book. It's called Soma. And Soma has anyone heard of Soma? This is a spiritual community. So the Rig Veda, you know what I'm talking about. The Rig Veda is an ancient Indian text. It's like one of the oldest texts written at all, period, in the whole entire world that we know of. And they talk about this elixir called Soma. It's like the fountain of life and understanding and wisdom, and it's a sacred sacrament beverage. R. Gordon Wasson thinks that was the Amanita Muscaria. Now, there are scholars like Terence McKenna that would say that that's not true, that it's the Stropharia cubensis, the psilocybin-containing species, the Psilocybe cubensis. But I believe in R. Gordon Wasson to a point because the Eurasian birch is in India, and this mushroom, it grows with the birch. It grows symbiotically in the birch forests. And so his book is very interesting and very long and very spiritual and very historical. You won't find a lot of scientific information in that Soma book, but in the Kevin Feeney book, you will find a lot of science in the back of the book about Amanita and what it does to us, how we can use it for modern applications. And I will get there. I'm going to try to wrap up this Meso-American stuff, but there's a few things I want to tell you about syncretism and mythology that tie into the Amanita before I talk about its amazing healing properties that we can use today. So is anyone familiar with the Popol Vuh? The Popol Vuh I learned about in college when I was studying Latin American cultures and history and Spanish. This was many years ago. But I remember like the teacher was cool. The class was like pretty boring. Like I was just trying to do the bare minimum in life and get by and have some fun. Travel down in South America. I actually took time off of college to go just travel all over South America when I was 19, 20 years old. And that's how I learned Spanish. And that's how I learned about plants and fungi and altered states of consciousness. Best decision I made was to get out of academia. But I did go back and finish my degree. But I remember that class very well, and I would love to reconnect with that teacher now, because what I'm learning is that the Popol Vuh is like the really solid evidence that these cultures were using mushrooms. And why is it such solid evidence? Well, the dynastic, the sort of the kings and the leaders, the imperial people of the Mayan society of the Yucatan that trails down into Guatemala and El Salvador, as I was mentioning, when they were particularly ravaged by the conquistadores. However, there was already like an understanding and a syncretism going on, because one of the high up kings of the Mayan people, he learned Latin, and so he wrote the Popol Vuh, which was this document about the history, the cultural history, religious history of his people and his lands in Latin. And so we now have the Popol Vuh. I saw it at the shop. I forgot to bring copies of it, but it's like the most ancient sacred text that was actually in a written language that has been now translated into like many languages, including English. But we have a translation at our shop. But you know, when you really look at the content of that document, you find reference to sacred mushrooms, and so that is very exciting for historians and for people like me. It's a little bit boring, but you know. So in the Nahua culture, the Mayan cultures, and also there, like I said, there's so much overlap because you had like peoples after civilization inhabiting the same lands and building over and over each other, building their empires and building. And so there's these sacred sites and these sacred deities that like they're transcendental. Like it's not even just only within Mexico. It's like, look at the pyramids, like from Egypt and from Meso-America. I mean, there's so much like overlap and like just like it seems like portals. So a lot of the different, like the Olmec, the Toltec, the Aztec, the Mixtec of Oaxaca, the Zapotec, the Mazatec, they have this pantheon of gods that represent sort of different nature spirits, many depicted here. One of them that comes up a lot with sacred mushroom ceremony, of course, is Quetzalcoatl, the serpent bird. And if you take enough psilocybin-containing mushrooms, you will eventually meet this deity, this being, and he will completely overtake you and clean your blood and take you on a journey of understanding that will blow your mind completely. And that's not what we're going to do today. We are not going to meet Quetzalcoatl today. This is a microdose ceremony. So don't get too excited. You might meet Quetzalcoatl at some of our other ceremonies further into the winter when we do our psilocybin ceremonies at the yurt. Tlaloc, I'm going to talk about a few of the gods from these ancient Mexican pantheons and how they could relate like with the veneration of saints in the Catholic religion that was brought from Europe. Tlaloc is the god of water. And there's another god called Xolotl, Xolotl. So Tlaloc was the god of water, and for people who traveled on water, and he is associated, this is so weird, but he is associated in Catholicism with St. Nicholas. Okay, he's associated with St. Peter, but even more, he's associated with St. Nicholas. Who's St. Nicholas?
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. Think now, have you heard about the mythology of Santa Claus from Siberia? He is the mushroom shaman drinking reindeer pee after the reindeer ate the Amanita Muscaria mushroom flying through the air with his intoxicated reindeers. Okay, and so Tlaloc is associated just naturally with this god, St. Nicholas, or this saint, St. Nicholas in Catholicism. Super weird. The Virgin of Guadalupe is said to be, it's kind of like a Mexican version of the Virgin Mary. is said to be associated with Ichel, the goddess of fertility, and there's another one, I forget her name right now. But there's this overlap, and it's kind of like constructed modern day religion in these areas in Mexico. You can feel it so deeply when you're there, and the food, and you feel the layers. If you haven't been to Mexico, I highly recommend going. Oaxaca is a great place to visit to really enjoy the food and the culture and just the ancient layers of history and culture there. So then let's talk a little bit about Chulotl. So Chulotl, he's associated with the land of the dead, so he helps bring you to the underworld. And now I'll tell you my personal story. So 2 years ago, like I said, I lived in Mexico for about a year. I was always around the Choloscuintle dogs, the hairless dogs. Are you familiar with them? Mm-hmm. Okay, I was obsessed. I wanted one so badly, but of course, I'm not going to go get a Choloscuintle, and I'm certainly not going to go get one and bring it to Alaska. Well, I go to my Day of the Dead ceremony with some women, and my question, because I have stepchildren, but I don't have any of my own, children. They're my children, but I didn't give birth to them. So I kind of asked in the ceremony, like, hey, like, what's going on with this? I'm going to have a, human baby. And there was a lot of dog energy in that circle that night. People's dogs had died. We were contacting with the ancestors. We were in ceremony. Needless to say, it was wonderful. Went home, didn't think much about it. I did pull, though, in the tarot cards, I pulled a card that was about children. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Anyway, forget it. A month later, that was on November 1st. A month later, to the day, a friend of mine calls and he says, hey, Gabby, I don't know who else would want to do this, but I have like a brand new baby Choloscuintle dog that was born in Big Lake on November 1st. Do you want to adopt him? And I'm like, what?
Wow.
So now I have Santo. And he's my little, so the Choloscuintle dog is associated with Chulotl because Chulotl is, he goes to the underworld. Now, a little more about Chulotl. Chulotl is covered in warts. He's very hideous, but he's warty. And he manages thunder and lightning bolts, and so does the other guy. What did I say his name? Tlaloc. They're both lightning gods. Lightning is so associated with mushrooms, but especially with the Amanita Muscaria. If you look at the Celtic history, Bridget is always the goddess of fertility, always associated with Amanita Muscaria and lightning. And they say when the lightning strikes, that's when the mushrooms grow. Well, I've also been told that when the mushrooms grow, it pulls the lightning down from the sky. So it could be either way. But isn't it funny that Chulotl is covered in warts? Just like the Amanita Muscaria is covered in warts. And he's managing the thunder and lightning bolts from the sky. He's dealing with the land of the dead with his sacred Choloscuintle dogs. I'm just saying. Okay. So on that note, yes, I have a Choloscuintle. He's very feral. He's adorable. I love him very much. His name is Santo. He was named after Los Niños Santos. That's one of the ways to describe the sacred blue mushrooms, the Niños Santos, the saintly children. They're called Los Niños Santos de las Aguas, of the sacred children of the waters. And they really are. They're just amazing. They've absolutely healed me in so many ways. I live such a beautiful, brilliant, wonderful, authentic life with an amazing community, and I really have to thank like my plant and fungal allies for that, because it wasn't always that way. I struggled a lot with addiction when I was younger, a lot of abuse, and brought all that PTSD to the relationships that I entered into in early adulthood, and I did a lot of healing with mushrooms. And I continue to do that. And now, more than focusing on myself with mushrooms, I help other people with the mushrooms now. So I hold ceremony and facilitate for others so that they can also, receive that healing and that wisdom directly from the mushroom. I'm not any sort of guru. The mushroom is really the teacher in these lessons. So on that note, we'll just talk a little bit about Amanita Muscaria and what it does. How many of you have tried taking Amanita? Yes, at ceremony. Awesome. Cool. Yes, of course. And some at ceremony, and some you've probably taken it on your own. This is the Amanita mushroom right here. So this is what we made our tea from. Here it is in capsule form. This is what we sell at the apothecary. These are like microdose capsules. And then this is an ultrasonified tincture of Amanita Muscaria. And the reason why I'm showing you these three different forms of the mushroom is because depending on how you process this mushroom, it will determine the effects that you get from it. So when you hear stories of people losing their minds and trying to walk from the middle of the woods all the way to Fairbanks because they ate Amanita, it's usually because they ate fresh mushrooms right out of the forest. That is not a good idea. Fresh mushrooms contain high levels of ibotenic acid. Now, as we all know, even if we've never worked with plants and fungi as medicines, we know that the dose, the threshold for a medicinal use is smaller in certain chemicals and compounds than in others, like Tylenol. Or well, let's not talk about Tylenol. That's so taboo right now. But like, let's say like you can, if you take a little bit of antibiotics, you'll kill the microbes, but if you take too much, you'll just kill everything. The dose becomes a poison at a certain point. Same thing with ibotenic acid. So ibotenic acid's threshold for therapeutic use is relatively small. You don't want to take big doses of ibotenic acid. However, taking very small doses of ibotenic acid is extremely healing. It helps to weed out neural pathways rooted in trauma. It's amazing for pain, topically and internally. It helps with anxiety. It helps with ADHD symptoms. So ibotenic acid is contained primarily in the fresh mushroom or the less processed forms of the mushroom. Does anyone know the term decarboxylation? Decarboxylation means that you've processed a botanical with heat, generally speaking. It's been processed with heat, like dried or made into a tea. Each of those processes are a decarboxylation. So the more that you decarboxylate Amanita muscaria, the more that you dry it, the more that you make it into a tea, the more heavily processed it is, the less ibotenic acid it's going to contain, and the more muscimol it's going to contain. Now, muscimol, the threshold for therapeutic use is very big. You can take a lot of muscimol without hurting yourself. And so when we do a high dose journey with Amanita, like we're going to be doing in our November 1st ceremony at the yurt, we're going to work with a strongly decarboxylated tea. And that's what we have here today too. This tea is heavily decarboxylated. It's dried mushrooms and it's made into a tea. It's brought all the way to a simmer, and I added lemon to it too to further decarboxylate it and to make it more bioavailable for you. But when you're working with the capsules, for example, the capsules are going to have a little more ibotenic acid in them. So if you wanted to take a big dose of Amanita muscaria, you wouldn't want to do it with dried powder. With the capsules, this is just for microdosing, but it's so good. Like if you have a blockage to like clean your house, this kind of sacrament can help you so much to, clean up your stuff and just take action. As a matter of fact, ibotenic acid, what it does in the system is it blocks glutamate receptors. And when glutamate is circulating in your nervous system, you are activated. Glutamate is the chemical of action. It makes you do stuff. A lot of people with like PTSD, ADHD type symptoms, we have issues with like this blockage. Like we know what we need to do, we want to do the thing, but for some reason we just can't like get past ourselves. And a lot of that comes from PTSD because as children, we were rushed, we were yelled at, we were hit, we were, whatever it may be, even worse things. But it comes from preconditioning, and it's epigenetic, it's ancestral is what it is. It comes down generations, and until we deal with it and we resolve it, it continues in our ancestry. So this is what we're here to do today. We're here to change the pathway. We're here to commune with the ancestors, to honor them. Because the ancestors that most need to be honored and seen are the ones that did the worst things. And I learned that from, what's her name? Her husband is Merlin Sheldrake, and he wrote Morphic Resonance. Her name, she's a very, very brilliant, the whole family is brilliant. Their son, Cosmo Sheldrake, Cosmo, he wrote a book called Entangled Life about mushrooms. He's studying mushrooms down in Chile right now. I don't know why, I can't remember the mom's name, but I took a class with her about family constellations and about honoring the ancestors. And she told me that, and told all of us that when we honor the ancestors that feel left, they're right here. They're right here. And you don't have to believe me, or, you know, take this to, you can do whatever you want with this information, but there's a lot of people, the Meso-Americans, this time of year, the ancestors are right here. They're right here with us, and they want to help us. They want to be invited into our lives. You know, human beings are imperfect. There's no way around that. So this is an opportunity, this ceremony today, and just working with Amanita in general is an opportunity to connect with your ancestors, to honor the dead, to honor the living, to honor yourself. I guess I kind of intertwined the medicinal aspect with the spiritual aspect, but that's what's happening right now in the world. The gaps are being bridged. And the Popol Vuh was a bridge. That book was a bridge. So here we are, we're bridging. We're bridging. So just to talk a little bit more about muscimol, because I talked about ibotenic acid. If you guys want to go forage Amanita on your own, what you would want to do is you get all your fresh caps, make sure they're in good condition. They don't have bugs in them. They're not waterlogged. You know, if it looks yucky, just leave it in the forest. It'll sporulate, and next year there'll be more mushrooms. It's no big deal. Let it go. You don't want bugs in your dryer. So you do want to get a dehydrator. You don't want to dry mushrooms in the oven because ovens don't have good circulation and flow, so you can easily burn mushrooms even on the lowest setting. And you don't want to ruin stuff that you get out of your forage. It's naughty. Like, you want to make sure that you use it, or just leave it in the forest to rot, because out there it'll resporulate, repopulate. If you're going to take something home, have a plan. So you dry all your mushroom caps until they're completely crispy dry, cracker dry. And then what I do is you homogenize them. Like, if you wanted to take home mushroom caps today, let's say you get an ounce of mushrooms, you grind these all up into a powder. Now you're not going to get like one cap that was stronger than another one. It's a blend of the strength of all of them. You've probably heard of like the poppy, you know, you don't want to smoke just one poppy when you harvest the goop from it. You got to homogenize stuff. Otherwise you could get something really strong or something really weak. You want it to be kind of an average. Thank you very much. And then if you're taking low doses, you can always just take the powder for that glutamate response, the action response of ibotenic acid. These tinctures have a really balanced amount of, they're ultrasonified tinctures. We use frequency to do our extractions actually with these. It's super high tech and very strong, very good. And we have content analysis for that on our website as well. But that product has a very good balance of ibotenic acid and muscimol. It's right in the middle. Mushrooms are adaptogens. Amanita is much more than an adaptogen. It's a spiritual sacrament, in my opinion, but it is also adaptogenic. So whatever state you're trying to go into, the Amanita is going to work with you to get there. So if you're going into an active state, you can use this tincture to go into an active state. If you want to use it for sleep, relaxation, and anxiety, you can also use it for that. It's going to be supportive of what the stuff that you're doing. So the muscimol, though, can be taken in much higher doses, and you reach a higher concentration of muscimol the more you process the mushroom. And so today we're going to drink tea. It's got a little bit more muscimol. Today is just a micro dose, a low dose, depending on how many people stay. We'll probably go through this whole thing right here. Some people are more sensitive to it than others. And so if you know that you're a sensitive person, then, you know, stick with maybe just 1 cup or half a cup, because this ceremony is just a microdose. We're not trying to get to the point where we can't drive home. I'm sure they would let you sleep here, but it's not ideal. At the Hatcher Pass Yoga Yurt, you can sleep over. So you're going to hear today, Jordan is going to come. We're going to play our music. He's an incredible guitar player. I'm going to sing. We have songs from Latin America. We have songs from this country. And it's a beautiful blend and mix of culture and love for the mushroom and for life, and for the ancestors, most importantly, right now. We are going to do a meditation, a shamanic meditation. We're going to, in the middle of the ceremony, we're going to lead everyone into a place to meet with the ancestor and to receive their wisdom, their message, their blessing, and then to come safely back out of that portal, finish up with more song, and then we'll close the ceremony together. So either using ibotenic acid, the capsules being like a more ibotenic acid heavy way to take this mushroom, a more activating way for most people to take this mushroom, or muscimol, like the tea. you will feel a difference in effect. And Amanita is very elusive, so it's not a classical psychedelic like psilocybin. People call it a dissociative, but I think that really misses the mark. I find it to be very ancestral. In my high dose journeying with Amanita, many times I have come to a deep understanding, especially of my Celtic ancestry, the art, the language, and their understanding of time can be seen through their art. And Amanita has brought me to understanding that time is not linear. Amanita has a way of showing us our dreams. It has a way of connecting us, disconnecting us from pain. And if you're someone that suffers from autoimmune or chronic pain, Amanita could be a huge ally for you, because in a higher dose journey with Amanita, you can get completely out of pain for like 20 hours. It's happened to me before. Several times I have scoliosis, so I have a lot of pain, or something. They would call it scoliosis. It's not. It's something else. But, I'm open to it going away at some point. That would be nice. But I've experienced an absolutely painless 20 hours after taking high doses of Amanita, which is a game changer, because a lot of times with pain, the neural pathways are firing, but the pain isn't even, the injury is not really actually painful anymore. It's just the neural pathways that are firing. So if you can get out of pain more consistently, then you can cope with like healing from the pain. So muscimol and ibotenic acid are both really good for pain. Just the muscimol is more, just remember, muscimol, higher doses, sleepy, reduces anxiety. Both are very good for alcohol cessation. Very good for alcohol cessation. Muscimol binds to the GABA receptors in the brain, and it brings GABA from the gut across the blood-brain barrier. Most of the GABA that we produce endogenously is in our gut, so that it's not even in our brain. So the muscimol is binding to the GABA receptors in the brain. It's bringing the GABA up into the brain, and it's very relaxing. It's very calming. It's really good for people who are going through alcohol withdrawal. Benzodiazepine withdrawal is another one. And so this is huge, because alcohol and benzodiazepines, there is no methadone for those things. There is no alternative, really. Like, you could even use iboga or ibogaine to get off of opiates. But now we're looking at Amanita, and so many people have been overprescribed benzodiazepines, and they're very difficult to get off of, and it's dangerous, actually, to get off of them. There's a beautiful story by Amanita Dreamer, who talks, she was suicidal. She was on benzodiazepine, she had 2 kids, and she had a plan to actually take her own life. She had an actual plan, like 2 days later, she was going to go in the woods behind her house and take her life. She was over it because she couldn't function with the benzos. Trying to get off them made her completely mentally ill, and staying on them was making her completely mentally ill. So she was looking out her kitchen window, and she saw these beautiful amanitas growing in the forest, and she said, you know what, I'm going to die anyways. I might as well go out there and eat those mushrooms, because I've always been curious. So she went out there and she ate those mushrooms, and she lived. Not only did she live, she wrote a book. She made a documentary. She started spreading that word all around, and that's who brought it to my attention about 6 years ago, that this mushroom is, we need to look at this mushroom for healing. And so she's quirky. A lot of people in these spaces, they're quirky, and they have their personalities, and they're imperfect humans, just like we all are. So you don't have to love every single thing about a person, but they might have something for you that is very useful information when it comes to working with sacred plants and fungi. And she's like that. So she's been doing a great job spreading the word, and her story is so powerful. I'm trying to remember what podcast it was on, but if you look up Amanita Dreamer, you should be able, it's one of her first podcasts she did, psychedelic podcast. So like I was saying, Amanita is it's not a typical psychedelic. They call it a dissociative, but it's so much more than that. And, really it's hard to describe, and I recommend that you just try it for yourself and see where it brings you. That's called bioassaying in science, and that means trying something yourself, experimenting on yourself. I've done a lot of that, and it's gone good and bad, but I'd say with the Amanita, it's been just overall just very, very helpful for me with relationships, with boundaries within myself, awakening my own inner doctor to find out how to heal myself. It's been supportive. I've been an insomniac. It's been very supportive for that. the pain aspect, and then now just providing it, to others is really my passion. One cool fact about Amanita is that it's mycorrhizal, so it can't be grown in a lab. It literally is interdependent on the birch and the trees and the detritus and the forest and the little animal duties and the little this and that. And like, you can't grow it in a lab. It's such a sacred mushroom. And here the season is very fast and very furious. And so it's very exciting. We have a lot of it in Alaska. So yeah, that's, do you guys have any questions so far, or do you have any?
I have a question on the dosage when you're talking about that one. I forget the one.
Amanita Muscaria?
Yeah. Is it more sedative the more you take and more energetic the less you take, or is it the other way around?
So it depends on the form, but I would say the more you
And
take,
texture.
in general, the more you take, the more sedative it's going to be.
Okay.
Because you're going to be less in this world and more in another world. The microdosing with the capsules, or you have ibotenic acid tincture, which I make out of fresh mushrooms.
Yeah.
So those products are really designed for microdosing, micro to medium dosing. Like, you could take this whole package, you'd be fine. I've taken like about 10 grams of dried powder before, and I'm a lightweight. I would never do that with psilocybin. I would never do that with psilocybin. My dose for psilocybin for me is like around 3 grams would be a lot for me. And I microdose a lot. Like, I'm very familiar and comfortable with, altered states and ceremony and microdosing. But the dosing with Amanita is like a lot higher than psilocybin. So you can totally just take like one of these capsules for most people is like pretty much sub-perceptual. If you don't feel it, but you notice shifts. Amanita is such an earthly mushroom. It can show you what's going on in your world like really fast. Like where
So
you're,
if you take them together, how are they synergistic?
oh, they're beautiful.
Because that's what I was doing, but
Naturally, right?
I must be a super lightweight because
It was strong.
I really had downsize.
And that's
but
the
that's
thing.
my functional everyday, barely even. You know what I mean? I'm not. It's perceptive, but not overwhelming at all.
Yeah, like you know your
But
threshold.
I had to dabble with it to figure it out.
Exactly. It's not unlike a pharmaceutical in that sense. Like,
Except you have control over this.
yes, and you don't have to keep taking mushrooms. So you can just take mushrooms, you can stop, you can start and stop and do it whenever you want. There's no like Prozac, you're not gonna feel it until 2 weeks, and then after a month you have to keep taking it or you're gonna have brain zaps and you're gonna be really messed up. It's not like that. As a matter of fact, you can take mushrooms with SSRIs, but they won't work as well because especially the psilocybin, it works on the same receptors. So if your serotonin receptors are inundated with SSRIs or SNRIs, they're going to be dampened to psilocybin. And so you're going to have to take more. You're going to have to take a stronger varietal to be able to connect with it. I recommend penis envy varietals if you are on SSRIs and wanting to come off of them. But I don't really recommend I would say entering into the microdosing world with the mushrooms, you don't have to have everything figured out quite yet, but at least it's a knowing in your heart that you're looking for something different. Like, same with alcohol and mushrooms. It's not that you can't take them together, you can, but you're not going to get as much out of the mushroom. So if you're being called towards the mushroom and you're being called away from some older habits that are not really helping you anymore, old coping mechanisms, I encourage you to dive in, try it out. You don't have to let go of everything right away. You can kind of move in both worlds, but hopefully the mushrooms will guide you to a more healing path that is, more authentic and based in nature and less harmful, and it doesn't empower the war machine. So, yeah, which is always positive, I think. Yes.
Hi, I'm curious about plant spirit healing, where you would connect with the mushroom but actually not physically take it.
Oh yeah, so I'll tell you a little story about that. I started working with Amanita probably since I was a child because I was observing it in my folklore books and stuff. But when I really started to connect with it, it was in 2019. It was 2019. So I was with a boyfriend who wasn't the right guy. I knew it. I knew there was something better out there for me, or more aligned. And so one day we go in the forest and with this other friend too, and I had never taken Amanita before, but they were growing all over the forest in Vermont. And all of a sudden, they started to pick all the Amanita, these two guys who had no idea what they were doing. They were just picking these Amanita, every single one of them out of the forest. And I said, what are you doing? You don't even know how to prepare that. You don't even know what you're doing. Like, this is not right. Let them be there and sporulate, and also so that other people can come see them because they're beautiful and they're sacred. I know they're sacred. And they were picking them, and we got in this huge blowout fight, and I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm done with this thing. I'm freaking out of here. So I left everything at that house. Wasn't the first time I'd done something like that, but I left everything at that house, and I just grabbed one bag of stuff, got in my car, headed to my family property to camp out and just get my head straight. And like that day, my second cousin, he said, why don't you come to Santa Rosa, California? And I'm like, I have no money. I'm like a loser. I'm 36 years old. I can't believe I'm going through this right now. I'm just such a loser. All the things I've done, like I haven't finished them, and just had to start over again. So I'm like, okay, Santa Rosa it is. And I had tried to move to that area multiple times in my life before and never was able to. So I get to Santa Rosa. I'm there for like a month. And I end up going to meet up with somebody to actually work with another sacred plant with cannabis. So cannabis and Amanita, moving me along. And I go to get some cannabis from someone, and I drive up this thing, and this person referred me to that person, and I have this like special feeling inside of me. And I'm driving up this road in Sebastopol, and I'm like, this feels like home. It's so weird. And I drive up, and I get to this house, and I'm like, wow, this is cool. And then Dennis, the guy I'm supposed to meet, comes out of the house.
Oh my God.
And I go, and then we talk, and I just instantly just really liked this guy. And I'm like, whatever, I'm like already done with all of that, like obviously. And so like we talk about mushrooms, and he's like, hey, I have this shed, you want to grow some mushrooms? I'm like, well, yeah, I grow mushrooms. And he's like, okay. And like, so then I leave, and like 5 minutes later, he calls me, and he's like, do you want to come back? Or like, do you want to have dinner? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm being asked on a real date by somebody. Like, this is an actual man. Like, this is not a boy. Yeah. Well, he asked me to marry him like 2 weeks later, and I said yes. So crazy. I'd never been married before, but he's my husband still. We got married in Palmer a couple of years ago. I helped raise the kids with him for the past 5 years. He's totally my soulmate. Love him so much. And to further this plant spirit story, because I believe the Amanita guided me to my husband. I think I was ready, and I think that day was like, that was the catalyst. Like, that was it. So we were in that house. We were living at that house where I met him for about a year, and things were not really going well. There was like divorce, all these different things, just hard times. Kids, two separated parents, all these things, and it was getting very tumultuous. And so I did a ceremony with myself. And I picked some Amanita, and I had dried it, but I hadn't consumed it yet. And I did a Brigid ceremony, like a Brigid, the lightning goddess, the goddess of fertility, and the Amanita Muscaria from the Celtic pantheons. And it was on Imbolc. It was like the 2nd of February. And you're supposed to make these Brigid crosses. And this is another ceremony that I do every year, the Imbolc ceremony, because it's so potent. And so I made my own Brigid crosses, but I think I made them out of the wrong kind of plant. It was a very sharp grass. Well, we got evicted the next day. We got evicted from where we were living. The whole family evicted in the middle of the school year during COVID. We're like, what the heck are we going to do? And I'm like, well, it's obvious. We should just go move to Alaska now. And they're like, what? I'm like, no, seriously, like, it'll be good. We can go up there, and it's like, we might as well just go now. And like, that was crazy, but we did. We moved to Palmer, and we started our mushroom church, and we started foraging Amanita and teaching people about Amanita. And I really, really think, to answer your question, that the Amanita has been directing me for a really long time, and I didn't even know it. So it was just when I became open to it that I started to have awareness of how I was already working with it. And then, I started consuming it after that, first in microdose, and then later in macrodose. And now I serve it to others. So
do you ever work with people just with the spirit of the plant rather than the physical?
yeah, absolutely. And that's what I tell people is like, you don't have to consume the mushroom to be in ceremony with it. So you could come today and experience the ceremony and commune with Amanita without even drinking the tea. Yeah. So do I hold like plant spirit medicine space? Usually people don't ask me for that. I think a lot of people are strapped for cash these days, and so they're looking for something like more obvious, kind of like a, with taking the mushrooms in. Most of the people that come and get to me, find me, by that point, they're looking to ingest it. But I know like Lisa Rogers in Palmer, she does plant spirit like ceremonies without any ingestion. And then a lot of times those people will come down to the apothecary after their session and start to procure different plants from the apothecary. But what I noticed in my apothecary too is like somebody will just be naturally gravitate to a plant. They'll be like, "Oh, doodly-doo, like what's passion flower?" And they're like, "Oh, that sounds cool. I like passion flower." And then they're like, "Do you have anything for anxiety?" And I'm like, "Well, you could just try the passion flower." So I see it all the time. I witness it all the time. I mean, we live in Alaska. We love nature, right? Like we're here at this mushroom event. Nature has the power to heal just about everything. I know, like when I go camping for like a couple nights, like I come back completely regenerated. Like I am so much better. My mood, just everything. So yeah, nature heals, and that's what this is about. And if you've forgotten about your ancestors, or if you've forgotten about how nature heals, or about your own authentic self or your essence, if you've built up a real strong personality and you're trying to peel back those layers and return to your authentic, to your essence, Amanita is an amazing ally for that. Yes, no birds. So, yes.
Just a comment, Gabby. So one of the things that you mentioned was that the plant gives you either what you need. And so, like for example, in the ceremony that we're going to be doing in an hour or so, how important is it to come with an intention, or do you just let the plant tell you what your intention is?
I have come in both ways personally. Sometimes there's something that I'm really working on that is at the forefront, and then sometimes I'm just in ceremony allowing to spring forth whatever may spring forth. Like your intention can just be to simply connect with the mushroom and understand something, understand yourself more, meet with the ancestors. It can be so simple. It doesn't have to be anything really directed. You can just let it flow. But the most important thing with intention is just that you're willing to be present and that you understand that this is sacred ceremony. I mean, that's how you'll get the most out of it. But really life is a ceremony. And so how you behave all the time is a ceremony. And how we move through life day to day as we wash the dishes, as we interact with people, and in our imperfections and their imperfections, and taking care of the mundane. For me, that's like some of the most ceremonial work that I do. Cleaning my house is a huge part of ceremony for me. Like my work couldn't exist without my house and my cleaning. Like cleaning is one of my most sacred practices that I partake in, and it hasn't always been like that. I was very, very disorganized for a really long time. Could not get myself to clean up or to motivate to make that change. And the Amanita is a really amazing tool to help activate and to make the mundane tasks more interesting. For example, the Kuryak tribes in Siberia on the Kamchatka Peninsula, they still work with the Amanita. Like their culture is preserved in that way. Like here in Alaska, I've honestly not heard at all any like old native stories of the use of Amanita. Like I'm sure there are some, but it's been like covered and hidden. A lot of this stuff has been hidden because like when you're good with yourself and you're not in like a heavy addiction and your shit is cleaned up and you're in ceremony, nothing can touch you. You're not afraid. So you can't be controlled. And if you can't be controlled, then you're worthless to the people trying to control you. So take mushrooms. Be uncontrollable. This is a really great book. Mushrooms and Mankind. If you need help like deconditioning from this cult of society, this is a really good book. It's just a small book. It's $13. I super duper recommend it. It's from a tiny little publisher down in San Diego called The Book Tree. But I sell a lot of copies of this book, and if you just need help, like getting out of your own way, and like just if you feel like really indoctrinated, little Amanita and little mushrooms and mankind might just be what you need on a Saturday night. Little Amanita tea in that book, and then get into a good dream state. Do little dishes.
So, just in closing, Debbie, could you just give us another overview of what we'll be doing in an hour?
Yeah, so in an hour we're going to have ceremony, microdose ceremony. So I have, this is about 65 grams right here. I don't know how many people are staying, but like a microdose for most people is like 2 to 4 grams. So that's what will be offered this time. If you want to take a high dose, then come to this ceremony. But when you high dose any like entheogen is like a psychedelic plant or fungal medicine sacrament, we call it. You know, you want to prepare yourself, like, and so this kind of speaks to your the deeper you go, the more you want to prepare your vessel and just be ready. But like in this ceremony, it's like low risk. It's not like a super deep dive. Like you can have a profound understanding from just a very small, like, look, what you were asking me, look at how my life has evolved just from interacting so briefly with the mushroom. I really believe these things, and you might think I'm crazy, and that's fine, but you probably don't. You know, you want to, so for this ceremony, not much preparation is needed, just being here. Everyone here should be just perfectly fine to be part of it. This particular ceremony, Jordan is coming. He plays guitar, and so we're going to play together, and I'm going to sing. I'm going to sing in Spanish and English. We're going to pull cards from the Oráculo Jade. This is it's deities and symbols of ancient Mexico tarot. Really cool. I have tobacco here, spiritual. We're going to burn some Palo Santo and sage to cleanse the area. And then we're going to go into our meditative space. We'll be singing and going into the ancestral meditation. So it'll be a shamanic portal. We'll take you into the portal. We'll do the work, the ancestral work, and then we'll leave the portal, and then we'll close with more song. So I have my little coconut bowls here for the tea. We have some water, and then we'll have time for sharing after ceremony. You don't have to share, but there will be time for that, so you can, you know, express your experience. But we've had like,
It's been very powerful.
Powerful for certain people, especially when you're feeling like you're on the edge. Some change is about to evolve. Like something just as small as this 2-hour ceremony can be like a catalyst for like a much deeper growth, and a much deeper dive. And so if you have or haven't experienced it before, I really recommend it. We do use sound bowls a lot of the time, but because Jordan is here and it's a short ceremony, we're going to really go for the guitar today. It's going to be really special. It's going to be next level because my awesome friend Jordan is going to be playing Spanish guitar. So, yeah.
So do you think the changing season, though, when you're talking about preparing, I think everybody I've been talking to lately feels that change you're talking about because we're getting ready to go into the darkness. We're shifting anyway, but our whole lives, especially in Alaska, change with the weather change.
Absolutely. Well, Dawn knows and Bobby knows that, you know, you guys have asked me to come in the summer, but I don't do ceremony in the summer. So this is because it's too much light and it's too much like ceremonies go into nature, do your stuff, get out there, try not to lose it. Like, I mean, I find it almost more difficult in the summer now than the winter because it's so much light. The winter is winter is my ceremony time. So yes, it is very seasonal. This is actually our first ceremony of the year right now. And this is Celtic New Year. So this is like Halloween, Saman, it's Celtic New Year, it's Dia de los Muertos, it's cross-cultural. And so this is the new beginning of ceremony season. And we'll follow up with the yurt ceremony, and then we'll have several psilocybin ceremonies until the spring equinox. And that's our big psilocybin ceremony at the yurt in Chickaloon. And then we're done for the summer again. So, yes.
When you harvest the mushrooms, you say you take the caps. Do you take the stems too, or just the caps?
Sometimes I do. I don't normally work with the caps. Like when I buy them from Siberia, I don't buy any stems. I only buy caps. So like the marketable part of the mushroom is the caps. When you go procure it, you're talking about caps. All of this stuff is made out of caps. Everything here. There's no stems. I've heard people work with stems. Like I have a friend that says that it cured her of her eating disorder, working with just the stems. But I've also talked to a lot of people that say there is no psychoactive element in the stems. So it's just, Amanita is a very under-researched, misunderstood mushroom. As a matter of fact, the 5-compound asoxazole ring that makes up its chemistry as far as like being psychoactive is so rare in nature. Like it's so rare. It's only found in like certain cyanobacteria at the bottom of the ocean. Like people don't understand this mushroom. We're talking about alloxanic acid and we're talking about muscimol, but there's compounds in these mushrooms which we have just no idea what they are. So it's very elusive. Go ahead.
How do you dry them?
So I have like industrial dryers because I dry so many mushrooms. We dry chaga, all of
Is
them.
that the same as a dehydrator?
Yes, any dehydrator would be fine. I like to put my Amanita caps on about 125 degrees, and it takes like a day or two. They dry pretty fast, but they need to be cracker dry, like a cracker, like a crisp. And then from there, you put them into a jar. A glass jar is great, or you can put them into a plastic bag, but it doesn't preserve them as well. A glass jar is the best with desiccant packets. It'll last in the dark. It'll last for years like that. When you use just Ziploc bags, the shelf life is not as good. Yes,
You skin the whites off of, and
the gills,
no,
the
white
universal veil, the white warts.
Yeah.
Oh no,
you don't.
that's gotta be good medicine. Most of the indoles are in the red part. In the red, on a plant it would be called the cambium layer, but it's like the thin red part of it. It's the red only goes, just tiny little bit, 0.5 millimeter into the mushroom. So that's where most of the indoles are, the compounds that give you the
And
experience.
that's for drying.
Excuse me?
That's for drying. Right?
Yeah, you can just take the
dry
cap.
it
You
and
just
leave
harvest
it.
the cap only.
So if they were fresh,
Mm-hmm.
you can take it off then.
Nope, I would just leave those warts right on there. That's part of the medicine. Keep the warts. If you want to smoke Amanita, which you can, then you do want to take the gills off.
That's under.
Scrape the gills. Yeah, the gills are on the inside. And if you're not sure what the mushroom is, do not ingest it. Like, unless you're 100% sure what it is, do not ingest that mushroom. That's how you stay alive.
We have one more question
Yes.
for Dessa. Dessa, do you want to?
Yeah, I actually kind of had a twofold question. Do you have a suggestion or recommendation on desiccant packets? Because when I have my stuff ground, I find a lot of conglomeration, shall we say. How can I help with that?
Yeah, I would say maybe you should just like layer in your desiccant packets, like get some silica packets, like you can get them on the internet or whatever. But just the thing is, if you put silica packets in with your whole mushroom caps and then you're gonna grind your mushroom caps, make sure you don't forget and grind up a silica packet. I've done that before. I've been really bummed out. But yeah, it should be good to just get, the best is like a glass jar and then just layer, put some mushrooms in, put some desiccant packets and so on. And then also making sure that your mushrooms are cracker dry when you grind them will reduce the risk of there being clumping or anything like that. But, Amanita is resinous.
Okay.
It's resinous mushroom. Like it's like waxy and fatty. So sometimes it's a little oily, a little bit more than like psilocybin or like it's just got like more oils in it, more fats and waxes.
Okay, so let's give her a nice big hand.
Yeah.